Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And hello everybody, and welcome once again to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen here with another simplified, quick, concise, and entertaining episode of the Juice Box. At Juicy Steen on Twitter, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, at Juicy Steen on YouTube. Subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts via iTunes. Subscribe on Spotify, listen to it on Amazon Music, juicysteen.podbean.com. If you listen to it on iTunes or on Spotify, please leave a rating or review, or both. That really does help the show grow. We had quite the week. We had WrestleDream come and go, notwithstanding some controversy among fans, but we'll talk about that. I would like to put out that I will be appearing next on the Shining Wizards podcast later on this year. It'll be December 8th is the next appearance for yours truly on the Shining Wizards podcast, so I'd like to put that out there. It is likely that we will have a Saturday night's main event prediction show next week. That will be likely what's going to happen. Additionally, of course, the month of November, we've got Full Gear. We've got Survivor Series locked in. Looking forward to those shows as well. We're going to talk a little bit of a WrestleDream recap. We're going to talk a little preview to Saturday night's main event, which will happen next week. We're going to bring up a few items in regards to WWE and AEW news. And as well, we're going to look back at an event 26 years ago, as of this recording today, Halloween Havoc 1999. We will discuss a little bit about that interesting show. So, let's kick things off with WrestleDream. This was a fun show. I'll say that right out the gate. I enjoyed the show wholeheartedly from start to finish. These AEW pay-per-views do tend to go long in the tooth, and this one was no different, ending around 12:30 Eastern Standard Time Sunday morning. But that being said, I quite enjoyed the show overall. We will talk about some of the matches in more detail, but Jurassic Express defeated the Young Bucks for the $500,000 cash prize. Now it seems like we're going to get a match on Collision with those two teams on opposite sides again. Jurassic Express teaming with Jet Speed, FTR teaming with the Young Bucks. That'll be a lot of fun. We had Jamie Hayter defeating Tekla by pinfall. The Hurt Syndicate got the number one contender for the AEW World Trios Championship. Kyle Fletcher defeated Mark Briscoe to retain his TNT title. Chris Statlander retained her AEW Women's World title, as I suggested should happen. Mercedes Moné defended and then won she defended the TBS Championship and won the interim Ring of Honor World TV Championship by defeating Mina Shirakawa. Brodito defeated Okada and Takeshita to retain their tag titles. Hangman defeated Samoa Joe to retain his world title. And Darby Allin defeated Jon Moxley in the I Quit match. Now, a lot going on in the back half of this card. But I want to start by talking about the opening of this show. This was, so talked about, such a point of contention this past week, where AEW has the tailgate brawl, they have the pay-per-view kind of lead-in show, they're contractually obligated to have that hour of programming on Saturday as Collision or something, so they had to utilize it. And they did so by having a few matches leading up to the pay-per-view with, the countdown timer and everything. You got to see the set of WrestleDream, which looked beautiful, by the way. The arch, the St. Louis arch being at the top of the entranceway was a nice touch. However, something unique that took place was at the end of this tailgate brawl, quote-unquote, pre-show. The middle of the jet speed FTR match was happening as the end of the tailgate brawl was also happening and concluding, and it bled into the actual beginning of the WrestleDream pay-per-view on pay-per-view, where the pyro goes off and the four men in the ring were in the midst of a brawl. And they have done this, they meaning AEW, in the past with, a Dynamite bleeding into a Collision if they're doing 3 hours of TV or a Battle of the Belts or whatever they've got. They normally do kind of blend them together to kind of synchronize the shows, and it's organic in that way where, the match is never just going to end. Oh, it ended at 5:59, so perfect. 6 o'clock, we're ready to go. Because I do think pre-shows in general have that problem where, oh man, there's 5 minutes before the show ends. They're taking this, it's going to end within the next 5 minutes. And it's, it's kind of tough to suspend your disbelief in that regard. That being said, I think that having a match bleed into the actual pay-per-view is rather unique and interesting, if not for the fact that they tried it. AEW tried something different here. I know they've done it on their regular TVs, and like I said, the Battle of the Belts, Collisions, what have you. But they've never attempted this on a pay-per-view. And to me, I will never be one to fault, a company for just attempting something unique, something new, something we haven't really seen. I just can't. And, it's pretty wild to see the criticisms that were out there where, to me, I don't know why so many people were nitpicking this. It's something different, and not many companies have even tried this. So, why not? I said it was one of the most unique ways to open up a pay-per-view. They were just fighting in the middle of the ring. It was organic. It was authentic. It made it seem like the match was real and that there wasn't just an out. And, of course, there were a lot of people, including some former people in the pro wrestling business who are still desperately clinging to the attention that they once had as people on TV, that it looks like the show's unkempt and it's... I guess it was intentional, but maybe they didn't know what time it started. I don't know. Like, they properly can't start the show. It looks unorganized. Why are we taking the beginning of a pay-per-view so seriously in that realm when everything else went off? It wasn't that the power went off or they were unprepared. The show went off exactly how it was supposed to begin. And a match just happened to be taking place, and that's how they decided on purpose to go about it. Many times, the second or third hour of Monday Nitro would begin, pyro going off, and there's still a match taking place in the middle of the ring. And here comes for a big company, they shouldn't be doing that. And look at you comparing AEW to WCW. No wonder they failed, and no wonder AEW is going to fail. It's just, I don't get it. It's not unorganized. It was on purpose. It was an interesting way to showcase that the authenticity of a match, not ending obviously before the pay-per-view starts, and I enjoyed it. They had the piracy intro, the pyro happened, and a match was authentically still happening. We've seen proper intros, quote-unquote, for wrestling pay-per-views for 35 years now. So, what is one show going to do? I just don't understand how people could take it so critically. when there's plenty of other things to be critical of. I just don't get it. But I loved it. I thought it was an interesting idea, and I hope that they can learn from that, and maybe they could do it a different way and kind of throw a jab at those that were saying there was something wrong with it. I think there's a way to do that. So we'll see. But talking about the pay-per-view as a whole, I do want to touch on a couple of things in regards to the Darby Moxley match. This was, always going to be nuts. It was going to be a, quote, gore fest for the sickos, and, use whatever terminology you would like to use. But we saw, skewers under fingernails. We saw the plastic bag. We saw an aquarium to try to drown. We saw, glass. Pretty much any and everything you could ask for in a match between Moxley and Darby. Moxley, however, quits / gives up / didn't say anything, yet they rang the bell as he was taking the Scorpion Deathlock in the center of the ring after being, he's laying on glass as this is happening. Sting did show up, which was awesome, with the bat, and kind of helped Darby out. And sporadically using Sting, I think, is a great thing to do. I really enjoy that type of utilization of the legends, so I fully back that. Now, there was controversy, of course, with the aquarium angle, and people saying, "Well, look how great this is for kids, and how are kids not going to look at this and want to emulate it, and how dare you?" Here's my thing. Wrestling has had weird, crazy, dangerous-looking spots forever. The plastic bag thing happened with Flair and Funk back in '89. Thumbtacks have happened. Fire has happened. Throwing people off of giant structures has happened. Forks have happened. Barbed wire. Pretty much everything. Exploding rings. Aquariums with piranhas in them, nevertheless. Pretty much everything has happened. I've seen, sick Nick Mondo take a weed whacker to the chest. Now, I know some of these examples are a little more extreme and not the norm, but ultimately it's down to the parents of a child that could be watching a pay-per-view. One, if you're allowing your child to watch a show all the way until 11 o'clock at night, maybe it's the parent that should be at fault for showing their child something that could be potentially dangerous. Or it's your job as a parent to police them and say, sure, this is what's happening, but you should know you shouldn't be doing that to anybody. And this is just in wrestling. Like, no one really does this. And I hate this narrative that, like, AEW has to, they're not a PG product. Why does AEW have to be responsible for what their demo that they're not shooting for is watching or complaining about? Their demo is the male 18 to 49 demographic, the older wrestling fan that has loved and lived through the history of professional wrestling and can enjoy homages to the ECWs and CZWs and FMWs of the world, all while enjoying the New Japan style and the grappling style. There's a buffet with AEW, and they've been doing that since the beginning 6 years ago. And I just don't like when people think that they have to, be so critical and, oh, how dare they do this? This is blasphemous. You're harming the children by putting this on TV, and oh my God, give me a break. Like, no, you can't. First of all, you can't compare WWE and AEW in regards of, WWE has been around forever. They will never put on a show that has some of the stuff that AEW puts on. But that's why AEW is here. It's the alternative. If you are a parent and your child wants to watch AEW and you don't want them to see something, tell them, okay, well, we'll watch this match and this match, but you can't watch this match. Or, in the case of like my dad and how I was raised, he showed me, this is what wrestling is, but it's also, not real life. Like, you don't do that. They always said, don't try this at home. And, I was watching ECW as a young man. The Attitude Era was happening, and people were saying, suck it. And blood was, prevalent in that era. And so many different things happened. And, we've gone through this throughout the years, like parental advisory stickers on vulgar CDs. And then, video games that are violent are being attacked because of real life incidents, and pro wrestling for similar things. It's all about the parent at the end of the day in regards to the child. If it's a young child, I think if you're a parent, you should be deciding what they watch, or, sit with them and tell them what's going on instead of just being negligent and assuming that they're just going to do everything that is on TV, because that's a reflection on you. And that makes you look like a bad parent, which if you're letting them do something that you're not comfortable with, then you are being a bad parent for not following your own standards. But I am not a parent. I digress. I'm just, over the narrative of, well, AEW shouldn't have this. Look how great they are for families. They never promote themselves as that. So I don't know why you're expecting it, nor do I see your point of how they should be catering to this audience. It's not their audience. It's not their main focal point. Why should they do that? So I vehemently disagree with those people, and it is what it is. So, but to continue with somewhat of the AEW stuff, Mox, Darby, Hangman, Joe, Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher, a lot of these feuds that seemingly could have, should have, normally in a sense would have ended at a pay-per-view such as a WrestleDream seem to continue, and there seems to be more juice in the box for these feuds. Now, that's from AEW's perspective. Do I necessarily agree? No. I think Mox and Darby should have had this I Quit. They had a coffin match. They have the I Quit match. Unless you're doing like a Buried Alive or the obligatory loser leaves town, or hell, do the loser gets suspended for 90 days, something to where they're off TV for a while, then this feud should not have happened any further than the pay-per-view. Back in my day, the pay-per-view was the blow-off. And I know you can have a multiple pay-per-view feud, and that's fine. But at some point, you're raising the bar so high, coffin match, I Quit match, what will it take for this feud to be over? Not necessarily even if the guys aren't going to be on TV every week. That's a whole nother issue. It's how many different things can possibly happen to either man before they decide maybe this is over between us and we can't move forward. I don't get it. I don't know what's necessarily next. I'm open. I'm curious because, Mox Darby, I would have said, yeah, they probably should close out at WrestleDream, and even then, maybe it's already too much. Yet they sold the whole damn pay-per-view on that match, so I can't necessarily fault them for that either. So, I just want new, fresh faces, new challengers, new matchups, and I do understand, Ospreay's out, Swerve's out, MJF is filming a movie, so there's just talent that you can't utilize at the moment, and this is what you got to work with, and they're doing the best that they can. And I do think we got Full Gear coming up. You're going to start seeing some more talent get back in the fold. We got the Women's Tag Team Championships going to be decided here in a tournament. So let's actually talk about Full Gear. We will have Big Boom AJ and someone of his choosing taking on RPG Vice, Rocky Romero, and Trent Beretta. I would wager that's on the pre-show. And we'll also have, of course, Mercedes Moné, Chris Statlander for the AEW Women's Championship. So that is going to be something for sure that I am intrigued by. I kind of think that, and I know we're not doing predictions just yet, but my early standing is I think Chris Statlander should win this match. I really truthfully think that, and I wouldn't hate it. You need something different. Mercedes Moné now is really up there and has 12 belts. She's 12 belts Moné, which is pretty crazy, yet I'm here for it, and I think that there's a chance she and Athena win the world tag titles, which, there's 8 teams. Queen Aminata and Jamie Hayter, they'll take on Sky Blue and Julia Hart. The Babes of Wrath, who are Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, will take on Athena and Moné, where I think Moné and Athena should, if the finals take place at Full Gear, which I don't know when they're actually going to happen, if it happens at Full Gear, the finals, I think what you could do is Moné already has a match against Chris Statlander for the TBS title. Is it for the TBS? Actually, you know what? I want to make sure I get that correct because I'm not sure. It could be for the women's. Yes. Okay. So it's for Statlander's women's championship. I think there's a moment here where you could have 2 matches for Moné, and she wins the tag title match but loses the other match, where you keep Stat strong as champion, and then she can have a huge win over Moné, and you can move forth with the tag champions, and Moné and Athena can have those titles, and also Moné could be pissed that she didn't have 14 belts and she only has 13 or whatever. So that's what I would do. We also have Rio and Alex Windsor versus Mina and Toni Storm. Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne versus Ty Mello and Anna Jay. Tay Mello, Anna Jay, I don't think stand a chance in that. So I would actually take Megan Bayne, Penelope Ford, Toni and Mina, and then Toni and Mina in the final against Mercedes Moné and Athena, probably taking out Aminata and Jamie Hayter. Although I wouldn't mind seeing Julia and Sky Blue go far. I'm a big fan of both those women in the tag division and in the singles division, but I just don't know if it's feasible to think that they can navigate this 8-tag team tournament to get to the finals, let alone win the finals. So, yeah, that is what we got pretty much on the docket with AEW at the moment. Let's go to the WWE side of it all. We will talk a little Saturday night's main event, which 2 matches thus far. November 1st, Salt Lake City. We have the vacant World Championship on the line. Seth Rollins got injured in his match at Crown Jewel. For realsies, no work here, at least so far. Seems to have had surgery of some sort, potentially in his shoulder, and will not be wrestling at Saturday night's main event. Clearly, I think he's really injured, thus the stripping of the championship. And now we get CM Punk and Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight title. There was a battle royal to determine CM Punk's challenger. Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker were not involved, which kind of made it more interesting because those 2 guys would have been obvious as choices. They were not happy about that, and I am looking forward to seeing who could potentially interfere in the world title match. But I definitely believe that Punk and Jay will be a fun match to watch because both guys have been world champion in this year already, and someone will have it for the second time. But we'll do those predictions next week. Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre, undisputed WWE Championship on the line. That will be interesting, to say the least. I still think Cody Rhodes will end up winning, but I do believe that we're going to find out whether it's a wrinkle in the story to advance us to War Games or another challenger waiting in the wings that we're not talking about to go against Cody in these next couple of months. But after that, Survivor Series at the end of November, and then 2 weeks after that, we've got John Cena's final match at Saturday night's main event, which will be insane. Something that I do want to talk about a little bit, though, briefly. There was a kind of an uproar and quite the amount of dislikes on the video showing Jey Uso winning the Battle Royal to get the shot against CM Punk at Saturday night's main event. And I do ponder, will we see a heel turn from Jey Uso sooner rather than later? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the fans are kind of sour on him at the moment. I know in the buildings they're probably not, which is all that kind of matters, because the fans at home, aren't necessarily in the building, so their cheering or booing doesn't really affect much, but the outcries can be heard for sure. And I'm not necessarily leaning with a Jey Uso heel turn, but Jey kind of becoming his own tribal chief in his own mind and kind of thinking he's above everybody and kind of letting it go to his head, potentially while winning the world title, could be unique, especially if Jimmy is on board. But more Usos and Roman stuff, it's been going on for so long. I fear for WrestleMania next year and how that could be loaded with Bloodline main event stuff once again. So I just don't want there to be some sort of Bloodline fatigue, because at the moment it seems like there might be. One more note before we close out with a little classic wrestling discussion. Money in the Bank is going to take place now the first week of September next year, I do believe, which will be the final week of no professional football. The last Sunday for that, September 6th, 2026, in New Orleans, Louisiana. Pushed back a week. It's Labor Day weekend. It's going to be the first Money in the Bank ever to be held after SummerSlam, and it's the latest they've ever held this PLE. So I am interested by that. I wonder what could take place in June or July ahead of SummerSlam, even though SummerSlam has been in July before. But could WrestlePalooza find its way in June and July? Could another PLE name come into the fray? Not really sure what could, but I know there's a lot of options there, and I don't know. I'm very curious. I like the fall aspect for Money in the Bank. I think it gives a lot of more intrigue into the fall months with whoever's holding the briefcases. And I don't find anything wrong with that. I think it's more intrigue for the lull of the dull fall months in WWE, which has been the case for such a long time, because once football and a lot of the major sports kind of kick into high gear, it's tough to survive. Once you get to the new year and you get the Royal Rumble and you're in Mania season, things are looking up, but it's a long run from September to December. So having Money in the Bank will kind of inject some more life, a little bit of juice, if you will. So I'm looking forward to that. And lastly, let's talk about Halloween Havoc 1999, shall we? 26 years ago today, this was, I believe, a Vince Russo show. So one of, if not the first, Vince Russo shows, but not without controversy. Let's talk about the card briefly. Disco Inferno retained his Cruiserweight title against Lash LaRue. Harlem Heat defeated the Filthy Animals and the First Family to win the World Tag titles for a 10th record-setting time. Eddie Guerrero defeated Perry Saturn by DQ. Brad Armstrong defeated Berlin in a singles match. Rick Steiner defeated Chris Benoit to win the World TV Championship. The Total Package defeated Bret Hart in a singles match, which was pretty unprecedented in '99. I never would have thought that was the case. And then we had the first worked shoot. You thought Bash at the Beach 2000 was it? Halloween Havoc 1999. Sting defeats Hulk Hogan to win the title. This is how it happened. He walked out. Hogan laid down in the center of the ring, and Sting pinned him, and that was the end of it. But this was a worked shoot. This was supposed to lead to more, and that's really it. Sting retains the championship that he had won at Fall Brawl the previous month, and that's really it, because we all know that Mayhem 99 the following year, or the following month, became a tournament-style bracket, 32 individuals, I think, to go after the world title. And, of course, Bret Hart ended up winning that championship in a great match against Chris Benoit, the Final Four being Benoit, Jarrett, Sting, Bret Hart. Love that last Final Four. I thought it was actually an underrated tournament. But that's, Russo's bread and butter. He did that at Survivor Series 98 with the Deadly Game Tournament, his magnum opus as a booker, but at least creatively. But they do this work shoot thing, and it's kind of terrible. But the next match is not. Goldberg defeats Sid Vicious by TKO to win the U.S. title. This was a bloodbath, and I love every second of it. Sid Vicious is continuously fighting, even though there's a bucket of blood pouring out of him. And it's a hell of a visual. I always loved watching this match because Sid just never quits. He's just out of it. The ref stops it. And it was a very realistic match that these two guys had, which was really cool. And I really liked that match. DDP defeats Ric Flair in a strap match. If you have one thing to watch out of this whole show, watch the pre-match promos with these two before the match happens. It is absolutely unhinged, DDP and Flair. So I'm here for all of that and more. And then they had an impromptu world title match, Goldberg defeating Sting, which they said was for the world title, and then the next night, which they did, they Goldberg held the title up, and he won the title, but in reality, they changed that. It didn't actually happen. They revoked that the following night, and then you get your tournament at Mayhem 99, so that is the end of Halloween Havoc. 1999, 26 years ago. Pretty crazy stuff. But what else is crazy is that this show is concluding, this episode at least. That is it for me today. I do want to bring up the unfortunate, the Drew and Juice and other shows that we had lined up with Wrestle Purists. 1 week, 2 weeks, and that was it. Andrew severed those ties and mutually parted ways with Wrestle Purists, and I was never affiliated with them, but I was on a couple of programs on their channel, so I appreciate them giving me that platform through Andrew. But admirable of Andrew to do that and stick with the guys that he prefers, his closer friends in this little niche thing we call the IWC. And he brought myself and Jordan along, Slick Flair, if you check him out on Twitter, to do a show this past Thursday called No Dirt, Just Dialogue on the Final Bell Media YouTube channel. Very fun show. Quality conversation. Jordan is a part of the Wrestle Collective, Dub C Worldwide. Check them out on Twitter. Those guys are great, and a multitude of those guys. I ran into a few of them in Dallas at All In, so those are some nice guys as well for sure. And Jordan and myself and Andrew did a triple threat, as it were, a three-way dance, and we discussed potential WBD sale and the WrestleDream stuff and some WWE stuff, all the interesting ins and outs of the pro wrestling industry without digging into dirt. No gossip, no dirt, just dialogue. So I appreciate those guys for giving that platform a run here now on Final Bell Media. We're back on where Drew and Juice has been held for so long, so that's where you'll see me every Thursday for the foreseeable future. We'll see where that takes us, but as for me, of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, and, of course, at Juicy Steen on YouTube. Listen to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and juicysteen.podbean.com. And if you do, listen to this show, on Spotify or on iTunes via Apple Podcasts, or vice versa, however you want to look at it, please rate and review the show. It helps the show grow. So that's it for me. Check me out on Twitter at JuicySteen. I'm sure to be talking pro wrestling throughout the weekend and leading into next week with Saturday night's main event coming up from Utah. Next week, we will have the prediction show right here next week with another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.